Welcome to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm Jack Hagel. North Carolina lawmakers are drawing up a new state budget, but their job is more complicated than normal this year. That's because the state is bracing for cuts to federal funding at a time when the state is also planning tax cuts. The federal cuts could force lawmakers to make tough decisions over funding for teachers and farm subsidies, scientific research, and even public health. WRAL state government reporter Will Doran has been following the issue, and he joins us now. Will, welcome back.
Thank you.
In the past few months, President Donald Trump has identified billions of dollars worth of programs and grants that he wants to cut across the country. How could this all affect North Carolina?
Oh, in many, many different ways. Trump is looking at just really broad, sweeping cuts to federal spending, and there are lots of things that the federal government pays for. Grants for rural school districts to hire teachers if they can't afford it otherwise. Farmer subsidies, which obviously we are a big agricultural state here in North Carolina, but also, in areas like the Triangle, lots of funding for medical and scientific research that funds hundreds or thousands of jobs at places like UNC, Duke, but also in the Triad, at Wake Forest and their hospital that they have there. And then we also have a big EPA campus here in RTP, and obviously there's plenty of people who work for the FAA at the airports we have. It's just all over that you see these funds, if they go away, how they could affect North Carolina.
Now, this all comes as the state is implementing a longstanding plan to cut corporate and individual taxes, right?
Yes, this has been a top priority of Republicans in the 15 years since they flipped control of the state General Assembly. It really started in earnest around 2013 once they had a Republican governor as well. And then they implemented some tax cuts that have already gone into place, really overhauled our entire tax system here in North Carolina about a decade ago, and more recently have just kind of been chipping away at it. Our income tax rate has been being cut by, about 0.25% each year for several years now. It's planned to continue being cut, and that applies to, both individuals like us as well as to corporations. And it's going to be several more years of tax cuts that those rates are planned to continue decreasing here in North Carolina.
So the state tax cuts plus the possible federal cuts, have there been any projections by budget analysts?
Yes, we are expecting to have a budget surplus this year, as we've had for several recent years. The coming fiscal year, maybe a bit of a wash, maybe a small surplus. But then after that, in 2026, the state economists are looking at a revenue shortfall that we will start running into deficits as soon as the 2026 fiscal year comes around, which, is something that lawmakers are writing the budget for right now here in North Carolina. So it's definitely a concern at the top of mind for some of our most powerful people in the state.
Well, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll hear about what's on the table for new sources of revenue in North Carolina. Stick around. Welcome back to the WRAL Daily Download. We're talking with WRAL state government reporter Will Doran about how state lawmakers are grappling with federal cuts. Will, for those who may be new to the state, what's the budget process like here, and what's the political landscape?
Yes, well, the easy question first. The political landscape is Republicans are in charge. They have large majorities in the legislature. We obviously have a Democratic governor here, but he doesn't really have the power to write the budget at all. He can and has sent his proposal to the legislature, but it's really Republicans who are going to be in charge of deciding how we end up spending our money. And we do this 2 years at a time. People who have paid attention to news out of D.C., they probably see Congress coming in every couple of months to avoid a government shutdown and, just do some sort of spending plan that'll get them through a couple of months. That's not how we do things here in North Carolina. We do budgets 2 years at a time, every odd numbered year. So like right now in 2025, we'll be writing the budget for both 25-26 and then also the 26-27 fiscal year. So that is all being worked out right now as we speak. The new 2025 fiscal year technically starts July 1st. Lawmakers are supposed to have the budget done by then, but as we've seen in many recent years, they always blow way past that deadline, and that's probably going to happen again this year because of all of these competing issues that we have with both the uncertainty from the federal level and then also just the fiscal picture of the state itself and how much money we're even going to have to spend.
Well, that's the big question, right? If federal funds are cut and if tax revenue is being cut, how do lawmakers plan to pay for services in this fast-growing state? Will they raise taxes?
Well, that's the big question. They will absolutely not raise taxes. At least right now, that's what we are hearing from Republican lawmakers. I mean, like I was saying earlier, it's been the top priority of the GOP for over a decade to cut taxes. They're not about to go back on their word and start raising taxes. So that's not going to happen. But, you know, this is a tricky time right now for the state. And so the hope is just that everything turns out well, that the budget analysts are wrong, we're not heading towards a deficit, and that Trump and congressional Republicans up in D.C. don't actually end up cutting as much as they say they're going to cut, or at least not cutting certain things that would fall on the state to pick up. You know, if they do end up cutting things, it's things that, you know, the state can just essentially ignore and say, oh, well, that's just gone. But that's not something that the state legislature needs to be funding. So right now it's just a lot of hoping that, you know, the dice fall, you know, in a favorable pattern for the legislature here. But yeah, if we kind of get this perfect storm of big cuts that the state does feel the need to pick up on, plus shrinking revenues from taxes, then it's going to be very tricky. Because here in North Carolina, we are not allowed to do deficit spending. You know, the federal government can do tons of deficit spending. We are trillions of dollars in the red at the federal level. But here in North Carolina, we have to have a federal budget. And so if you don't have enough revenues, you either got to raise taxes or you got to cut spending.
What does Governor Josh Stein propose?
Well, Governor Stein has proposed freezing the tax rates where they are now. He's not saying that we need to come in and start raising taxes immediately, but he's saying, okay, all of these planned tax cuts that y'all have set up at the legislature to go into place over the next couple of years, you need to just kind of throw that out the window. Don't do it. Let's just hold off with the current revenue streams that we've got, see if that can kind of take us through this period of uncertainty that we have right now. That has not been popular with Republican leaders at the legislature. Senator Phil Berger, the top Republican in the Senate, said absolutely not happening. Speaker Destin Hall, who's the top in the House, has said no interest, obviously, in raising taxes. He kind of left the door open to I think his phrase was turning the knobs on the tax cuts. So maybe not a total freeze, but, you know, maybe slowing them down a little bit compared to what they've got planned. But that's all going to be part of the ongoing budget negotiations. Now,
there are some other ways the state could boost revenue, but they haven't always been super popular with lawmakers. Tell us about those.
Yes. So the state Senate in particular has looked at a couple different outside-the-box options for raising revenue here in North Carolina to make up for the loss of taxes. And that would be legalizing medical marijuana and then also legalizing more casinos. Neither of those has been able to win enough support among Republicans to pass. The marijuana bill would almost certainly pass if it were put up to a vote, but the House has never allowed it to go up for a vote because it did not have enough support specifically from Republicans in the state House. So we have not done that. And then the casino plan really just kind of scuttled the entire state budget process recently. And it seems at the moment that is just dead. It's not coming back anytime soon. But, you know, if we do start running into these big budget deficits, if we have to also start potentially paying out, you know, hundreds of millions or even billions of dollars more to pick up some slack from the federal government, then, you know, you could see lawmakers come back and say, hey, maybe we need to reconsider those casinos. Maybe we do need to go ahead and legalize marijuana. So, you know, those are all tied together in this budget picture.
So this all puts state Republicans in a pretty tough spot. Do you expect any political fallout from the budget process?
You know, it's hard to say. There already has been political fallout from the casino issue that came up a couple of years ago. That was something that Senator Berger championed, and he is now facing a pretty serious primary challenge in, you know, running for election in 2026 from his local sheriff, who was not too happy about the casino plan and some other proposals that Berger has put forward. So, lawmakers do need to worry about being challenged, especially from the right. Just the way the political districts are drawn here in North Carolina, almost nobody faces a competitive general election. Basically, every election in North Carolina for the legislature is won in the primary. And so, Republicans do not want to be faced with the possibility of raising taxes because they'll probably lose a primary challenge if they vote to raise taxes. But at the same time, if they, don't do something to help and their local leaders, their county commissioners are saying, hey, we're having to fire teachers because of this, or, we're having trouble funding the sheriff's department because of this, then they could also find themselves in a tough spot. So this is going to be a really tricky year. And maybe a couple of years for the Republican leadership at the legislature.
Certainly going to be interesting to see how they work this out. Thanks, Will.
Thank you.
That's WRAL state government reporter Will Doran. For his in-depth reporting on the state budget, go to the NC Capitol section of WRAL.com. I'm Jack Hagel. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for listening to the WRAL Daily Download and for making us part of your morning routine. Another great way to get WRAL news is the Morning Briefing newsletter. It's a daily email with triangle news, events, and headlines to help you get ready for the day. Sign up at WRAL.com/newsletter.